Alright, let's get started. So today I'm going to be covering the complete graphic design theory for beginners course on Udemy. This is part of essentially my, you could say, SAS journey or passive income, app development, solopreneur, whatever label or term you want to assign to it. I want to make apps and passive income 5,000 at least within a year or two, and it requires a lot of learning. And I'm unlike other people that might just try to jump in and start doing it. I prefer spend 1 month or two on each topic, make sure I learn it thoroughly, and then get started. And so part of my first phase is essentially, how do you get an idea, validate it, design it, design at least the initial mockup, and then start coding it. Coding it is the second phase, but anyways, for the first phase, we're looking at UX UI design with Figma, market research, competitive analysis, lean methodology, customer discovery. And in particular, the first sort of section is UX UI design. And that section requires a little bit of an understanding of graphic design theory. And so for that, I took this course. This course was about, again, it's always like $10 to $15. It's not that much. And this course I think was pretty good. Definitely I would say an introduction, but it was good nonetheless. And so let's get started. For this course there weren't as many, it wasn't assignment based, it was more theory. And so with theory you just have more notes. Alright, so my dog was bothering me, but let's get into specifics. So I thought this course was pretty good because from having no understanding, it seems like they covered the main points, which was these points. In addition to that, they have various resources, so PDFs and other places I guess I can look for further learning. And then in addition to that, they have these bonus lectures where they walk through actually designing something. And so in some of these lectures, I think they had a body wash project. They had a soda can project. They have 3 more projects in this one. And yeah. So in those 5 projects, they show an example that you can follow along. But it's more so just showing how they work and showing how the process they go through to take an idea to a product that looks nice. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, so since this course is based more on theory, there aren't necessarily any results. It's just notes that I took, and yeah, let's walk through those notes. Let's get started. So first I guess official section is how to become a graphic designer. Here they have this handout that I won't cover, just because I don't know if they want that to be shared, but I will share the screenshots that I took. And so here it's just showing where graphic design starts or fits into the entire business process. I'll just take the words they have here, and we can see graphic design is more so for marketing, and within marketing there's just various ways that it can be used. So we're looking at ads, video ads. We were looking at ads that can be placed in magazines or in billboards. So that's print ads or newsletters or I said magazines. So anything that's sort of physical. And then there's digital, so there's social media. It's also the branding of a company. And then the last part I think is, I guess, for events and things that companies might host for outreach. And so graphic design has lots of various areas that people can specialize in. And so some examples are here: logo design, UX UI web and web design, which is what I'm focusing on, editorial design, branding and event design, social media, pattern, digital art, package design. So lots of different areas. And so to get started in any one of these areas, you need to start sort of with the theory and the foundations, or having a brief understanding at least of the theory and the foundations, and that's gonna help you like 80%. I'm just guessing. So yeah, there's color theory, color harmonies, typography, font pairing, type and layout, hierarchy, layout, contrast and scale, and then design psychology. And so for each of these topics, they have like a whole section dedicated to it. So starting with color theory, they just go through like the definitions of all of these different words. So we're looking at like color, what is hue, what is saturation, what's value, how can we sort of work with it and manipulate it. And so they're talking about contrast. This I think is like an important concept, when especially when you have like art and graphics and you're combining that with text and type. So yeah, there's contrast, there's different color models. So here it was the HSV, HSL color model. Then there's RGB. They're saying why RGB, where it's typically used, and I think it was like in print maybe. And then there's this other color model, and they just explain where it's typically used and why, the history of it. And let's see what else. So my dog allergies are kicking up. My nose is really dry, but let's see. So yeah, then they were just showing, I guess, typical examples of how color is used in modern software. So they were talking about how hexadecimal code is used to specify specific colors. And then also color pickers. Let's see. They talk about, I guess, different ways that colors. I'll just be specific. So they were talking about Pantone vertical. Oh no, okay, yeah, so just again being specific, there's Pantone colors, so just selecting a variety of colors. Duotone is just 2 colors, and how it can look good together. Gradients, just blending colors. So again, very specific definitions. Then they were talking about how colors have meanings, and like the brief meanings associated with every color. I think like the majority of people sort of have heard about this in school, but it's always nice to just like be intentional with what colors, be conscious and intentional understanding of what colors you're choosing and what they can mean, what they typically mean. And so that was just a good list to have and a good refresher. Talking about how warm colors, when chosen together, can look harmonious, as well as cool colors. You can choose, for example, analogous colors, so choosing colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. Complementary colors is another way of choosing colors, where you're choosing colors that are like 180 degrees apart on the color wheel. Another way is triad colors, so 3 colors that are sort of like 60 degrees apart. And another way of choosing colors is just say there's an image whose vibe or feeling you like. You can use a color palette extractor. Canva has one of them. I think Adobe has one as well. So there's lots of places for these sorts of tools. And so that covers color selection and methods. Yep. Creating a mood board. Yeah, so that covers color theory. Now for typography, here they were talking, I don't know why I keep saying we, groups of fonts. So they were, again, just starting from general definitions. What is typography? What is typeface? And what is font? Font is specific, I guess, style and weight of a typeface. So typeface could be like Times New Roman, but then you're including like the light, bold, semi-bold, regular. I don't know if I said that. Italic. So all the different variations, and then font is like Times New Roman regular. And there are 4 general classifications or categories of fonts, and that's serif, when they have like the little tails, and they look sort of, I guess, fancier, like Times New Roman. Sans serif, where they it's like this text where there's no tails, it's just simple, easy to read. Script is when it's a little bit more like cursive, it looks a little bit more unique. And decorative is when you get kind of crazy and you get a little bit almost artsy and graphical with the text. And then they had like I don't have the image here, but they have, I guess there's different little characteristics of typography, and some of these are, for example, each typography has like a baseline or not. They can have all these different characteristics in each letter, and then between each, like in a word, between each character there's kerning, so the space between each character, and then the space between sentences or words, if you have like words stacked on top of each other, that's leading. And one trick you can do also, I guess, to play with characters, manipulate them, is to mix fonts, and it can look good. And so they have like this handout that I won't show, and a general tip is to have 20 to 30 fonts that you like, because there's thousands and thousands, and if you have like 20 to 30 that typically are sort of like in your arsenal, that are well fit sort of all the typical cases that you'll run into, then you'll be able to be more productive. And here they talk about a little bit about the history, where sans serif comes from. They talked about a little bit about the feeling. So bold is like yelling, you're trying to get attention, while if you have thinner lowercase text, it's more sleek and it's quieter. And typically for the body text, you want to use regular weight, and only for headings would you want to use like bold. And then you can also change the spacing if you want to be more relaxed. If you want to have a more relaxed tone, you should use wide spacing, while tight if you want it to be more cohesive, or if you want to give a sense of urgency. I think typically in like social media, where you have like a post that has a lot of information, you might want to go for tight text. Let's see. Yeah, they mentioned how sometimes you do need to adjust the space between characters. For me at least, I've never really thought about that, but it was interesting to see how it can change, I guess, the message, the emotion that's being conveyed. Then as for alignment, typically we're using left aligned or center aligned. Center aligned is more for shorter sentences, while right aligned is rarely used, but if it is, it's like because the design or the art in the back is already leaning towards the left, and you want to kind of balance it out. And then typically, so let's see what we covered so far. Color theory, color harmonies, yep. And now we're looking, I might have skipped font pairing, but in general with font pairing, you want to look for like 2-3 maxed fonts that work well together. And typically we're looking at like sans serif and a serif. Yeah, and sans serif I think is typically the heading, but you don't have to stick to that. So yeah, just find 2 fonts that work well together. One you're going to use for like the headings, and then the other you're going to use for the body. And so now we were starting to get into type and layout hierarchy. And so in type hierarchy, heading is typically the first thing you see. This is strong, this is bold, like in this example. the subheading is smaller. This is a subheading, it's smaller. And then for body copy, this is the smallest text size. So these three little sections of information is the smallest text size, and they can be broken up if there's a lot of text and you want to make it like easier to read and digest. And then the last thing that you want to see, you want this to be a little bit attention grabbing and slightly bigger, is at the bottom, the call to action. What do you want the person to do? And yeah, so that's type hierarchy. And actually here's font pairing. Might have just reorganized it. So for font pairing, they just gave some examples. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of these, but here's like sans serif, I think it's Helvetica, and then slab serif typeface, so I can't read that from here, but it's some type of like serif type. Serif, yeah. I'm using type in two different ways right there, if you didn't catch that. And yeah, so that's section 4. Now, this project create a social media graphic, I think this one, yeah, it was like something that you can follow along, but I just chose to watch it because I don't really want to follow general graphic design. I'm more so here for UX UI design. And so anyways, it was interesting to see, and it was a good example to look at if you're interested in general graphic design. And then I guess like a rule or a tip or a trick that I got from that was, when you're considering like layout placement, consider the rule of thirds. So break the canvas into thirds, both vertically, horizontally, and then try to place the subjects and place, or the objects, the main focus of the image, if there's more than one, I think, like in one of those places. No, even just one. You want to place it somewhere where it fits in those lines that you're placing on the canvas, the grid. Now, going into photography theory, I don't know if this fit into the... Yeah, I'm not sure where it fit into that, but graphics are typically used, so probably we're mixing in a little bit of photographs and just in general art. So they did go over some of the photography principles, technical words, mentioning how if there's a single subject, it's typically best, if you want that to be like where the attention goes, to place it at the center, and how the subject looks in the frame can change the feel. If they're really close versus if they're far away, completely different feelings. And then they gave some resources where you can find images, stock images. And one thing to consider is make sure that you're taking images that are free for use, for commercial use, that are royalty free, and don't just take images from wherever, because this can get you into legal trouble. You may be served up like a fine from whoever owns it, and unless you want to go to court, you have to pay it. So okay, I have to power through these. I get tired of hearing myself talk. Okay, so layout theory. So now looking at layout, well, I already said layout theory. Layout design effective, give me a second, grids. Yeah, I guess we'll just go through. I don't know if I organized this section, but there's not even that much. Yeah, so one thing to consider is you don't really want to pack, I guess, the art or what you're looking at. You want to have white space, and white space typically is when there's space between elements, or there's space in the margins, which is mentioned here. And I think even like in maximalist design, there's like a lot of empty space between the elements. As much elements as there might be, there's still like empty space, I guess. And you also want to make sure that it's balanced. It looks weird if like you just have this here and then just a bunch of white space. So make sure it's balanced, and everything should have like a main focal point, the first place that you want people to focus. And if there's like more than one thing that is about the equal size, it's kind of dragging your attention to both of them, it's going to make it hard to know where to look, and then you're kind of get overwhelmed. And then you also want to have your empathy, so just be in your audience and your viewers' shoes and think about how they might feel looking at it. Also covered this before, but type hierarchy, so heading, subheading, body, call to action. Again, bringing up that it's better to use grids. Make sure the grids can help balance what's going on, and a good place to start before you even start designing is just use blocks, use rectangles, and either draw it out or use like software like Figma and see sort of, does it make sense, the layout that you want to go for. Another thing to consider typically is a golden ratio, and so this just shows that here's like this main section, it takes up I think around 2/3 of the page. This other section takes up 1/3 of the page, and then within this one section you can further break it down again and then again and then again. And they said something interesting about like what you should put in the spiral. I think it was maybe that you should place the most information, all the text, in the spiral, but I don't remember. Yeah, put more info at the inside of the spiral, so you can see like all the text, all the little like details are sort of in this area. But I guess I need to look more into this and see, I guess, why that is. And let's see. Oh yeah, and this they had like a resource here which actually was pretty useful, but they were showing how like different mediums have different grid spacings. For apps, typically 4 columns is used. Websites, 12-column layout. And then for magazines, they have like their own sort of layout. Books aren't I guess rows and columns, but very specific way. Like books, we all know the body of the text is what takes up like the majority of the space, and then there might be like the author at the top or at the bottom, and then you have the page number. So you just be aware, or look up what grids are typically used for whatever medium you're working in. They do have a resource, but again, I won't share that. And let's see, the last thing is logo and design branding. So here, some good tips I guess we can just go through is logos should have a balance between symbols, type, and elements. Let's see, what do they mean by this? I don't remember off the top. But when you design the logo, you want to make sure that if like part of your logo is cut off, that it looks recognizable in a way, like Dolce and Gabbana, or even Nike. Like if you hide part of it, you can almost kind of guess whose logo it is. And it also shouldn't depend on color. If it's black or white, or if you add color to it, does it still kind of give you the same, I guess, feel, like, or not feel, but do you still recognize the logo? You want to be able to see it from a wide variety of applications. You want to be able to see it from a distance. Is it sort of just trying to go with the current trends, or do you think it'll be classy even years from now? Yeah, so fight the urge to be trendy. You can also use negative space to your advantage. So look up like logos with negative space, and you can see one example that they gave was like FedEx. There's a arrow in the sign, in case you didn't know. So that's an example of negative space. Make sure that it's liked by the company's demographics. You can use social media for feedback when you're testing. If it's good, you can then run with it. If it's not, then reconsider designing it. Make it readable, unique. It's better to be clever and in that way be unique versus like trying to be pretty. You can look for inspiration on some websites, and in general you just want to keep it simple. So I think that covers. And then at the end they did go through like a little sketching process. I think the designer, she produced like a logo for a coffee company, and so she was just going over like how she ended up actually creating that. And I think 2 other examples she gave as well. This was just plugging her own courses, and then as I mentioned before, I skipped this completely. And the last thing that they re-emphasized was, again, when you find pictures, make sure that they are commercial, free of use, royalty free, that you can use it commercially, because otherwise you can get into trouble. And like the easiest photos to use are just Creative Commons zeros or photos that you take. For other ones, you might need to purchase an end user license agreement. And fonts, photos, they both have sort of their own ways of purchasing. For fonts, you're going to need to purchase a license agreement that depends on the way in which you're going to use it. So if you need to use it for mobile apps, you might need a different license than web. Some have like a complete package where you can just buy all of them for a little bit more of a price. And for photos, typically they're mentioning how if you use it like under 500,000 times commercially, there's like I think if you use it for personal, like advertisement, not selling, that's one license. And then there's another license where if you are selling it, you're selling it under a certain amount. And then if you intend to sell it over that amount, you need to buy it different. So there's like a variety of licenses, and you just need to make sure that you understand what's going on, and that you minimizing the legal risk of using something in whatever case you're going to use it. And the last 3 sections, as I mentioned, were they're working over projects that pertain to the trends of the past few years. So in 2022, they're mentioning how, actually I don't remember the trends, but I think one of these had trends where we like things very simple, very flat, like modern almost, or in modern apps, when we see like flat, simple, clean logos and apps. So they're just talking about the trends and giving a little bit of history of why we transitioned to those trends, and then working with those trends and making some projects. So I think this one they made like a geometric shaped poster. Here there was typography for social media, like ad, and then glass morphism, which I think is just when you make like a shape look almost see-through with blurring, and then 3D typography. And then the last one was 2022, where we're looking at body wash. And so I don't know what this one was, Instagram Reel project, and then making like a soda can. And this one where I think was a little bit more, in one of them they talked about maximalism, and you're trying to convey like energy, as opposed to like minimalism where you're trying to be calm and relaxing. So that was everything with this class. I think it was a pretty good class to get started. I am not sure where else I would have learned this, but if you're watching this, I think what I would do, maybe as opposed to taking this class, find different resources for these specific areas. But even then, I think this the projects themselves and the resources provided in this class are a very good starting point, if you really just want a place where everything's sort of combined. But yeah, next I'll probably see if some of the books I have cover color theory, typography a little bit more in detail, and just get a little bit, improve the feeling, I guess. I think that's what designers go for, where you can't really, it isn't like theory and math where it's clear that you're improving. It's more so in practice, in applications, the results you're producing look better. So that's how you sort of gauge one's expertise in this. So I don't really know where I was going with that, but anyways, that was it for this class.